Hey everybody, it's Heather from Paisley Grace Makery. Thank you so much for being a Maker Club member for our holiday box. And I'm so excited about this one because it's simple, it's classic, and it pairs perfectly with last year's box too, where I really feel like you can take the entire collection and make a great mantle or sofa table display. So let's dive in. As always, we have 3 different levels of our projects. So the first one that we have is our sign of the month. And for that, we have this adorable layered snow globe design, which I can't wait to show you how this is gonna come together. And we did include optional lights to be able to feed in the bottom of it so you can have a little bit of extra light up, just like we did last year. Then we have our main project of our maker box level. I'm gonna put the paint and everything to the side. And we have this glorious medium square frame sign, which is valued over $70. And as a maker box, you know that you only paid $50 for this, even less if you're a combo or Gotta Have It member. And then you also get 20% off all of your purchases. So what a great value. We hope that you guys love it. And this is just such a classic design. And I love the quote of "May you never be too old to search the skies on Christmas Eve," which I think Christmas is all about believing and just believing in the good in the world. So really excited to see this one come together. And then for our Gotta Have It project, we have these trees, which don't look like a whole lot right now, but wait till you see them come together. It's going to be stunning. So I'm gonna take this and put it to the side. Now, if you are painting at home, you might wanna deconstruct this box and use this as your work table. It works really well, and that way you're not getting your table messy. And you can just put it away if you don't finish it all in one sitting. So let's dive in, and I'm going to start with our maker box project. So the first thing we're gonna wanna do is paint the frame of our project. So I'm gonna grab our American Walnut stain. It's gonna say AW on the top, if anything, but it's the brown color in there. And you have one of your yellow sponges. So as with everything with paint, a little goes a long way, especially with stain. So I'm gonna dip and scrape, and then I'm gonna mash this all over just the frame part. I don't wanna do inside the board just yet. I'm gonna wait to do that once I flip that tape. So I'm really keeping my sponge moving. I don't wanna have anything pile up there. And then to do your inside edges, I like to let gravity work for me. So I'm gonna hold it up and mash those in there. You can kind of push with your pointer finger. And don't worry too much, because we can always do touch-ups with the little brush at the end if we need to. All right, so I got that edge. We're gonna flip and rotate. Dip, scrape, flip and rotate, really mash into those edges. And you do not have to stain yours. If you don't like the American Walnut look, you could paint this white. You could even do the whole thing black. You would be able to peel up the tape if you wanted to do that. But I like a little bit of rustic. It matches my buffalo plaid decor that I have everywhere in the house. All right, so I got all those edges. Now I just want to do the top edge. So again, dip, scrape. If you get a little too much on there, just kind of rotate your sponge. Do a Karate Kid motion, wax on, wax off. You're gonna see a nice painted edge there. Flip and rotate. Okay, now I have all of those edges. I'm gonna go sand, especially the inside thing, so I can flip this tape. So stand by. Okay, now that my inside edge is all sanded, I'm gonna take this tape, but I wanna peel it straight because I'm gonna use it again. So I'm peeling and just kind of sticking it to the table for a second. Peel all 4 pieces. All right, so now I have the wet side that I've already painted. I'm going to flip and use the dry side here. And I'm going to snug it up next to my edge and just pinch and push down. And you're going to repeat that for all 4 sides. So I'm going to flip, grab the clean side down, flip, and then I'm just running my fingers along that edge to push it back down, making sure your corners come up really nice and tight. If for some reason they don't, you can always peel a piece off this top part and use it to mask that corner a little bit better. There we go. My piece is stuck together a little bit there. So I'm kind of using it, I'm sliding it and then rotating it to get it right next to that edge. So if that strategy helps you at all. So here I have a little bit of a gap. So all I'm gonna do is peel some excess tape from the top and just use it to block that edge. Then I'm gonna rotate and I'm going to stick my last piece of tape down here. So I'm sliding it, rotate it up so it's nice and tight along the base, crease and go. All right, so now I have my background ready for the next step. I'm gonna take my black, unscrew it, and now I'm going to grab my other yellow sponge, dip, scrape. Remember, a little bit of paint goes a long way, so I'm going to just use this to mash on, and I do want to get into those corners. It can be a little tricky, so just kind of use the sponge and mash it nice and flat. If you're struggling with that, there is the little paintbrush included in your kit, so you can get your edges at that point too. I'm going all the way around my edges. Getting nice into the corners. And this first layer is going on like a stain. And you could choose to leave it that way. You don't have to do it, you know, super bold. The stain can be really classic and simple. And I don't think I'm gonna go strikingly black, but I think I'm gonna go at least one more layer for a little bit more solid look. So I got my first layer on, and it's put on nice and thin, so there's not a lot of shininess to my board. I'm gonna dip, scrape. And it's not a bad idea to dry in between layers. So if it's pulling some paint up, just give it a quick blow dry. And you'll find that wet paint sticks to dried paint better than it does the board sometimes. Once you have it nice and solid the way that you like it, we're gonna take this to a blow dryer, and especially because we're using black, which has a ton of primer to it, we want to make sure we get our board really, really dry, or we're gonna fight our stencil sticking to it. So get it where you like it, and then we're gonna blow dry it. So it's bone dry. If it's got any coolness to touch, it's not done yet. Because otherwise you are going to fight your stencil really, really badly. Okay. I got one little knot here that I'm trying to cover. There we go. Okay, once again, I'm gonna go hit the blow dryer. Okay, so it looks pretty good, but I want it just a little bit more solid. So now that I have given my first layer a blow dry, I'm gonna do one more layer with just a little bit of paint to make it nice and even. Okay, at this point, I'm just taking a baby wipe and cleaning my hands off a little bit. If you are at home, you can wash your hands. And now I'm going to take the sandpaper that is in my kit, and I want to sand this. It's not going to change the look of it, but it's going to help lay the wood grain back down so our stencil can stick and make it so we're not having as many bleeds. So like I mentioned, especially with black, it's important that we sand and that it's really dry. All right. I'm just gonna grab a paper towel and brush off the sawdust and the debris that I just created. And now it's time to put our stencil on. So I'm gonna push my paints out of the way, flip my stencil over so the white side is up. I'm gonna move this up just a little bit so you guys can see. And I want to take this white away from the blue. So I'm gonna peel it back low and slow. Now, if anything comes up like this blue is, I'm gonna roll it forward, crease it, and push back down. So this is coming up, crease. So you're kind of doing a back and forth motion, and the straighter back you peel versus lifting it up higher, the better it's gonna be. So I'm pretty much just kind of rolling it back low to the stencil. So I want all of my blue to stick to the clear. Nothing should be on your white. And if it is, it's okay. Just roll back forward, push it down a little harder. Or if it peels up and you have it on the blue, you can use the tweezers or your fingers to put it back on the board once we stick it. Okay, so I have nothing on my white. I'm gonna put that to the side. I'm gonna take my board here, and I'm gonna line this up in the middle. A little bit towards the top, because that way this bottom part's gonna look like a bunch of snow. Okay, so I'm pushing it down. Now I'm gonna take my fingers and hands and push it down really good. If it's having any hard time sticking, you can use a credit card to burnish it onto the wood, but you don't want to push too hard because sometimes it can really bond with that wood depending on how much you sanded. So now I'm going to take this clear layer, and it's probably hard to see a little bit with the dark background, but I'm going to peel this really slow. Again, if any blue comes up, roll it back forward and peel nice and straight. So I'm kind of just easing my fingers back, slowly revealing it, and using my fingers to push that blue down where it comes up. If you're having a hard time and it's really not sticking, and you can get the whole stencil back up, you can heat your board really good. That can help it stick. But you do want to avoid heating the stencil too much because it's going to shrink and melt that adhesive. So just kind of wiggle back and forth. If it's not sticking, you probably didn't sand enough, or it might be a little damp yet. So oftentimes it'll let you peel it all the way back up still. Like this E is coming up, so I'm just gonna stick that back where it belongs. So So go slow, there's no rush to this part. The bottom is definitely the trickiest. There we go. Okay. So now I'm just kind of looking through, making sure everything's stuck down the way that I want it to. And I'm realizing I want my windows to look lit on this bottom thing. A lot of the windows are just, some of them are on, some of them are off. But I'm gonna peel these so that way it looks like windows. Yours might already be peeled. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Okay. So now I want to just kind of take a minute and push everything down. Careful not to peel it back. Make sure everything lined back up right. All right, now it's time for the fun part. I'm gonna take a white sponge and a paper towel, and I'm gonna do the white paint, and I'm gonna dip, scrape, unload once on the paper towel, and then I'm gonna stamp straight up and straight down over the entire thing. I want mine to be really classic. I'm going to highlight these stars with silver, but I wanna do a layer of white first. So just a lot of stamping straight up and straight down. The first layer you don't want to be shiny. It should look kind of airy or dry as you're putting it on. And then we're gonna build those layers slowly. So I always say, be like Elsa, let it go, do a layer, work on a different section, and then as that dries, we're gonna come back and do another layer. So I'm gonna keep hopping and you keep hopping and put some of this in hyperspeed so you don't have to watch me hop. And I'm gonna do at least 2 light layers to get this the way I want it. Okay. So I have most of my stuff filled in. Anytime we're adding a lot of paint, sometimes it can pull away from the board too. So if you're having that problem, just let it dry, walk away for a little bit, grab a snack, and then when you come back and add your last layer, it'll give a lot better coverage. So once you get all of your white on there, I want to add a couple little silver accents to these stars. So I'm going to use another white sponge, and then you have your little pot of silver. And I find these pots a little challenging to get into, so on a paper plate or even on your paper towel, just dump a little bit. And then I'm just gonna go over my white with the silver. And the reason I like to do a base layer is it just helps that metallic have something to stand up on so it doesn't get lost into the background color. So I'm just gonna get a little bit out. A paper plate is probably perfect so it doesn't absorb into the paper towel too much. And anywhere that you see a star, just go back over it. Perfect. I'm going to do one final little check to make sure all of my coverage is even. One little star here I finally see. All right, there we go. So once you have everything covered, then use a tweezers or a safety pin, something that you can kind of nudge the stencil up with, and I'm just gonna get it started. And my first step is to peel away all of the big parts. So it's going to peel off in different sections, that is fine. Just try and keep it from doubling over onto all of your pretty painted black here. I'm just kind of nudging at the edge. I'm not digging into my board, just to pick up these centers of the letters. Now I just gotta grab all the little stuff from my village. I am loving it. It's so simple, so classic. It really will fit into any style of Christmas decor, whether you love traditional or whimsical or bright. Now I have a couple little spots you might see that the paint got under the stencil. I'm just gonna take same tool I used to peel, tweezers or safety pin, just lightly scrape away at that paint just to lighten it. Anywhere that you have a little bleed. So I'm not gouging the board, I'm just kind of chipping away at the paint just a little bit. And that's gonna minimize it already. But inside of your kit, you have what I love to call the ninja brush. I'm gonna take that top off, and you don't need a lot of paint to touch up. So I even kind of swirl it on my hand or a paper towel, because you really almost just want just the top of your brush to have a smidge of color on it. Like it's not even paint, it's just wet. And then you're just gonna come, and I almost do just little tiny dots wherever I got that paint. So I'm not even like needing a per se steady hand, because I'm just doing a bunch of little dots with just the tip of my brush, just wet with that paint, not doused. It's just got a little bit of color on it. And that's gonna help me touch anything up that might have got a little crazy, because black is hard to get a stencil to stick to. But what I love about it is it's the easiest to cover up. So even if you want to add more windows in there or different things, you just can do those little tiny dots, and it's going to touch your board right up. Now we're ready for the big reveal. So I got a little bit of, oops, I just used the wrong sponge. It happens to the best of us. It's okay, it's just paint, y'all. Just dip, scrape. You can add a little extra layer to your snow if it was being stubborn. I can even blow dry it and add more to that snow section down there, because I don't really need a stencil for that. Okay. So now I'm going to take my edge tape off and reveal my project. So pretty. From years of doing this, I have like no nails left, so getting in edges can be fun for me. But tweezers are my best friend. I have some right here. Awesome. Ta-da. Simple, classic, and absolutely stunning. All right, so let's put this to the side and work on our next project. All right, so now I'm gonna go to our sign of the month project. Much littler, much simpler. Looks a little more complex, but it's really not. Okay, now this comes in different layers, and you're gonna notice you have 3 weird spacers. We're gonna use these at the end, so just put those to the side. You really don't even have to paint them. We don't need a whole lot of space here, so I'm gonna cut my white sponge so I can control it just a little bit better. So I'm going to dip, scrape. I like to unload, and I'm gonna give myself a nice stained edge because I want it to correlate to this guy. Okay, so now I have my stained edge, and my next layer is gonna give me my snow. So obviously my snow, I want to be white. Now I have messed up my sponge completely here from when I dipped in the wrong color. No problem, just cut the edge of that off and you have a brand new sponge, okay? So I'm gonna dip, scrape, still unload, and I don't have to worry about painting this arch part. I'm just gonna paint my snow. Okay, and I like to stop so I know what's coming next. And I'll give myself a hint. So my next layer is gonna have my snowman. I'm gonna put that to the side. I don't really have to paint the snow again, but just because it's simple and easy and it goes right into my snowman, I'm gonna do that. But I'm really just focusing on the snowman here. Now this is where that tiny brush is gonna come in handy. I'm not gonna add a lot of details to him, but I am gonna give him a black hat. We don't have orange in our kit because I just felt like the orange was gonna really stand out. So I'm gonna just use a little bit of this stain just for his carrot nose because I want it to be really classic. If you have an orange Sharpie or something, you could certainly add that if you wanted to. So I'm gonna stack, so I'm getting that visual. So this is what we have so far. Now I'm going to place my house piece, the one that comes before. So I'm adding a tree and a house, okay? So I'm going to get my green, and same thing, we'll pour just a little bit of green on a paper plate or your napkin. I'm not being very neat over here, I'm sorry for that. I'm gonna dip, unload, and I'm gonna paint my tree top. And then I'm gonna paint the trunk of it walnut. Again, I don't really have to worry about that snow because it's being covered up by the top layer. But I'm gonna do all of my houses white. So I'm gonna dip, scrape, unload, and I'm just gonna paint that house white. Now, if you want to add some color, you could do different shades of blue. You could have a lot of whimsical fun and do, you know, red and green and all sorts of color houses. I really am trying to correlate this with last year's projects, which were very white. So keeping them really simple and classic. So you can see, as I start to reveal, I'm building that scene. Now, I like this, but I don't want my tree to stand out a ton. So I'm going to use my big brush in here. I'm gonna dip and unload it really heavily on a paper towel, and I'm gonna come and just add a little bit of snow to the leaves, just to kind of mellow out that green, okay? I swear, sometimes I am a little bit neater with my paint, but not today. Okay. So we're building. Now our next layer behind there is gonna give us our tree. So all I have to worry about in this layer is our tree, which I'm gonna do with our walnut stain. And again, if you would like, you could make him have a little bit of snow on there with that light distressing. So you can see I just made him have that snow. This is what our layers are looking like so far. Okay. So our next layer is going to add Santa and our fence, and really there's a little bit of these layers that could go in any order, so it's up to you. There's not per se a right and wrong except for the big house and then the tall and skinny house, because the tree, you need the tree to kind of block. The rest of it really could go in any order, so I think every time I've painted this I've had it in a different order and they've all turned out great. Okay, I want Santa's sleigh to be in silver. So I'm gonna pour a little bit more silver. And I love this silver because it's so like bold. It doesn't take a lot of silver at all to give you a great coverage. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of snow to my fence even. All right, so here we are, making progress. All right, so this is the two layers. This guy, the moon's gotta be in back, okay? And, no, I'm sorry. The moon is the second from the back. Because you want this tree to help block this house. Otherwise, it's hard to paint that section. It's the only part that I've found to be challenging. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint my layer with the moon, and I want my moon to be silver. And I'm going to make my clouds white and this big house white. But again, if you glue these out of order, it's not a big deal. You'll barely notice it because all the trees kind of layer on top of each other anyway. And it's a very simple fix. Okay, let's make those trees green for the top and American walnut for the trunk. Again, I'm not worrying about the snow because I've already painted that layer to cover, so I don't have to worry about those lines. And then let's add our snow to our trees. Again, I just dip, mash, 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 and then just kind of lightly tickle around those edges of the trees. As heavy or as light as you want. You see it coming together? Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing with my last house and tree layer here. So I'm gonna paint the house. find the houses kind of take 2 light layers of white, just because white doesn't have a primer to it, so it does take a little bit more to make it dark. And you can see I'm just kind of going over this tree right now. I'm not stressing about it because I'm going to come back and add green to it. Okay, now I'm going to take this, and what I do is I just kind of make an imaginary line with the sponge following that line of the house. It's not going to show drastically, so don't stress. Or you could use your little touch-up brush, but that's how mine looks. Okay, so it's not perfect, not stressing, but that way you do have a green tree in the background. And we'll paint our other tree and give it an American walnut trunk like we did the other ones. And then let's go ahead and do our snow. Okay. I'm going to show you where we're going to put those spacer layers in just a second. So you can see it really looks like a nice little busy town, but let's help it all stand out. So I'm going to paint this background black, and I'm going to use my big sponge just because it's nice and chunky. You could use either, it's not really a problem. And then just to have a little bit of fun, I'm gonna add some silver to my brush. And I'm just gonna use my finger to kind of splatter that silver so it almost looks like it's snowing. Now I'm gonna wash my hand and I'll show you guys what that looks like. Because to me this is a snow globe, so it should have some snow. It's just a really light layer, kind of make it look galaxy. So then when I put it all together, it looks like this. Okay, now we included some fairy lights. So what I like to do is to kind of use these, and you might want to play with it before you glue it, but I like to put one right against the black layer, do a layer, and then do 2. Because what I find is then when I put my lights in those gaps, it's gonna help light up the whole thing, okay? So again, play around with it, see how you like it, but that's gonna kind of give you a little bit more depth. So now all we gotta do is glue. So I'm gonna, once I have it sampled the way I want it, I'm gonna take that glue pot, I'm gonna take my touch-up brush and just kind of clean it off real quick. And all I gotta do is use dots because I don't want it to come out. So I shake a little bit, so I don't wanna have it up. So I'm just gonna put kind of little strokes, dots, what have you, on the edges here. And then just flip it and line it up. Okay, if any glue comes out, just have like a little rag handy to dry it up so it doesn't show when it dries. And we really only have to do the
the framing. So if you found on that first layer, like I did, that glue was coming out on the edge, I'm going to show you a little trick. So I don't have to glue any of this stuff because it's not touching anything. All right, so I put my glue. If you're worried about it coming off on the edge, just kind of dab it once on the paper before you layer it. And then that's gonna get the excess off for you. And for our final layer, clean up my edge there. And then you can take your black sponge and finish off your edges. And you'll see now we have 2 gaps there. So I can take the lights that are in here. Okay, so we did our sign. Now we're doing our sign of the month. We have it all done, it's glued. I've waited till it's dry. Okay, and now I'm just gonna take the fairy lights and kind of measure about how much I have. And I'm gonna make this first layer kind of beefy, so to say. I'm gonna put this one in my large gap. I'm just kind of layering it in there. You can use tape if you want to tape them in. We purposely did not design like a way to really lock them in because they don't last forever and they're very affordable to replace on Amazon. But this way you can just kind of layer them for the season, pop them out when you're done for the season, and you can choose how long to leave your tail based on where you're gonna store it and when you have to turn it on and off. So the second one is a little tighter because remember we just did 1 layer. So having your safety pin or your tweezers to just kind of help you push that down in there will be helpful. And then even just a piece of packing tape or something similar, painter's tape, will help keep that all in. You could use Velcro command strips if you want this on the back. You're just gonna pull your tab and reveal your little village. How cute is that? Okay, so we have 1, we have 2, and the third Gotta Have It project is super simple because we knew it's busy. So we're gonna keep it simple. Keep it simple, sister. So you see on your Gotta Have It project, we did it all on 1 big sheet so you don't have to chase little pieces. And it is taped. So I'm just gonna open up the shrink wrap here. And this is gonna create a duo of standing trees to place on your other side, which will correlate beautifully with your standing trees from last year if you've been a member that long. We greatly appreciate you. So one of the reasons I put this on a big board like this is for ease of painting. I'm just gonna do my American Walnut stain. And you could do green if you wanted to bring in the green. I'm gonna stay really classic and simple here. And I'm gonna do all over. Really, really, really simple. Okay. Then I have my silver. And I'm gonna go ahead and put my 2 stars as silver. so it matches my other sign. That really helps things be cohesive feeling. And then we're gonna add a little bit of snow. So I'm gonna use my brush, dip, unload really heavy, and then I'm gonna come in a downward motion so it looks like it's kind of falling on those. So I'm just pulling down. Load, unload. And the more you unload, the lighter your effect will be. But I want these to be some pretty snowy trees, so I didn't unload a whole lot. And I'm just gonna go ahead and even do my bases. Okay, that's all the painting. I told you, super simple. So now I'm going to reveal these. You could go blow dry it, that would help. Just gonna peel the tape off the back. And all your pieces should fall out. Now with your glue pot or super glue, whatever you choose, I'm just going to use a sponge to make it a little bit easier. But you can pre-lay out these, just kind of go in the gaps. Okay. And then for your bases, I'm going to do my bases first because we need those to dry. So just glue. Dump some glue on my plastic here for ease. So you're putting the one with the notch on top of the solid one, and then we're gonna put the thing that kind of looks like a belt buckle right on top of there. One looks a little square and one looks a little rectangle. Just make sure you're lining those up so they fit. And then you're going to do the same thing by gluing your tree limbs to your tree, making it kind of 3D. So I'm just dabbing some glue on here and putting them right in between the layers. If you get lost, looking at the picture will help give you an idea of which pieces go where. But you just line them up biggest to smallest. while those dry, I'm just putting the lids on my paint. You can keep your paints in a Ziploc and just out of like high heat, and they'll really last from project to project. So, you know, store them, don't throw them away, because you can use them on other things and add some creativity. Get some more colors. All right. Oh, I forgot my stars. Can't be forgetting those babies. It's the best part. All right, stars on the top, done. Here we go. And if your base isn't dry all the way like mine, you might have to let it dry. But I'm gonna try and let you guys see what this is gonna look like standing up before mine is completely dry. There we go. So there is your Gotta Have It project, still drying. Your sign of the month, and your Maker Box project. I hope you love it. We hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas. Thank you for being a Maker Box member from the bottom of our hearts and supporting small business. So many fun projects planned for you next year, and can't wait to take you on the journey with us. Have a great year.